Hello, everyone. We are back in the hospitality room, land of crock pots and other assorted items. Bobby Swofford, Blair Cartwright with you, Mr. Swofford. How are you today?
I'm good. I mean, you've got that background, and I've got like a 1997 printer over here. I've got to up my game.
But I've never been here. This is another photo my daughter sent me from Spain.
Yeah,
I have no idea where it is. I'll never see it in life. In fact, this is probably the closest I'll get to
yeah.
a beach for the next 6 months. So.
Well, that printer might as well be a boat anchor because it only works a third of the time. So maybe it can go to the beach with you.
Yeah, I'll tell you what. Put that printer near me long enough, and it will be in three pieces. Because what is it about printers now? You have to like. It used to be they would just print. You didn't have
Hmm.
to. They didn't go to sleep or any of this stuff. I've probably trashed 5 printers in the last
Yeah.
2 years because of that.
Well, the beauty about this one, it magically, my computer wants to make it print on both sides, no matter how many times I've
Ooh,
changed the settings. And every time, 1,000% of 1,000%, it gets jammed. And of course, it never gets jammed. The one that's easy to pull out, you got to like take out the bottom and like get all that. But enough
yes,
about printers in the hospitality room. We prefer crock
yes,
pots and iced beverages.
yes,
All right,
yes. We do. So, with that in mind, shall we get to our headlines?
let's go.
Headline number one, Ray. Oh, Chris Mortensen. Um, we'll get to him in a moment. He passed away a long time ago. I don't know if we ever mentioned it or not, but we'll mention it at the end. Monster Series, Razorback Baseball at Kentucky
Yeah.
this weekend. Um, Molina probably still out.
Hmm.
But in the grand scheme of things, I was thinking today, granted, whoever wins is going to be in first place in the SEC. But in the
Hmm.
grand scheme of things, does it really matter at this point?
No, honestly, this is one of those series that it doesn't matter huge picture. It
Mm-hmm.
doesn't matter CC wise, other than the obvious conference standings. What this may do, though, is determine who is the number one overall national seed come seeding time. Say you win this series and you finish the top of the SEC standings or a game within one or the other. You could see the selection committee say, "Hey, well, Arkansas beat 2 or 3 of Kentucky, or vice versa, and let's go ahead and give them the nod. They're the number one seed, the number two seed." I mean, that's really splitting hairs, but honestly, I mean, it's a big series. If you're looking to hold that crown of being the regular season champ, it's going to go a long way. I don't think that you should put way too much into it. If you lose a weekend series, even if you get swept, probably shouldn't look too much into it. But there's a little bit to kind of invest in mentally about this.
Speaking of overall seeds, D1 Baseball put their projections out. Had
Mm-hmm.
Arkansas number two, had A&M number one, which surprised me a little bit.
Yeah.
But then I got to thinking about it. You know, Arkansas has done the number one seed thing. Didn't turn out too well. So probably not a bad thing to just kind of cruise along under the radar and see what happens,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Well, yeah, look at the last 25 years. I mean, they talk about it every postseason. How many number one overall seeds have won a national championship? Uh, LSU was the number one overall seed last year, right? Or was it somebody else?
Maybe it was. I don't know, but
Yeah,
it's rare. It's almost you
it's
don't
very
want
rare.
that. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's a curse. So yeah, we'll see. If anything else, it just helps build momentum. I mean, it'll be competitive, and it's probably not a bad thing to have a competitive series. They've been cruising right along. It's almost to the point where, like Arkansas track was in the '90s and 2000s.
Mm-hmm.
They just when they don't win, it's news, but
Correct.
when they win, it's like, we expected it.
Yeah, Wake Forest was the number one national seed last year, so that streak continues.
Okay,
So
yeah,
it was at LSU. Yeah, I mean it is. I mean, and you and I have talked about this at length at other times here in the hospitality room. Um, it's a blessing and a curse of what Arkansas baseball is, and as you just said, what Arkansas track is. Uh, you win, you're like, yeah, you're supposed to.
hmm
You know, last I didn't watch any of the game last night. It's one of the few Razorback baseball games last month that I didn't watch, and I saw that they won 12-7. I'm like, that's kind of cllose. Like, why are
yeah,
you giving up 7 runs to Missouri State? I mean, that's the kind of the point we're at now. Like, I'm complaining about a game in which they won by 5 runs. Like, by
yeah.
12-3. Like, what happened there? But I mean, it's they're to a point with that program that you almost have to look for things to complain about. I heard no sunshine on drive time on the other before I turned him off because it just drives me nuts listening to that show. So Arkansas is ranked number 1 or 2 in every poll. They're in first place in the SEC, yet they're like bottom 5 in every offensive category in the league in SEC games.
Yeah.
And he puts on his sarcasm hat like he always does, and like, oh my gosh, just imagine how good they would be if they did this, this, and this. Talking about obviously you're really splitting hairs, but I mean that's what Arkansas baseball is now, and that's what Arkansas basketball is about to become when you look at this roster. Like you're going to be like so critical over the most minute things because you're almost expecting perfection every time they step onto the field.
It's almost like, and I don't know if it's the rise of social media, but everyone's always looking for the downside, looking for the negative angle instead of just, enjoying the team. And baseball is such an arbitrary sport unto itself. Softball the same way.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you can get shut out, you can get run ruled in one game and then reel off a 21 game winning streak. I mean, it's so arbitrary.
Yeah, it is. And one thing I love about baseball or softball, even that too, you could have a great day at the plate. You could hit 3 absolute missiles, and you could be 0 for 3 in the box score.
Yeah.
I mean, you could line out to the pitcher, you can line out to the third base, and all of a sudden you hit one right to the warning track, and the guy makes a great catch. And all of a sudden you're 0 for 3. You have done nothing. But guess what? You scored up the baseball 3 times. You did pretty much all you could do except for get lucky.
Mm-hmm. It's crazy. It's got to be the hardest game to predict, without question.
Well, it's definitely the game where the most can go wrong. I mean, today I've been tracking down scores. Postseason baseball and softball started here in Arkansas for the small schools. I've already seen 4 number 1 seeds have gotten beat between the 2 sports, including one regional host who was probably thought to be a pretty heavy favorite to win the state championship in Southside B branch in Class 2A baseball. They're there every year. They had a Razorback signee a couple years ago, and their season's done. I mean, I didn't look up and see what their overall record was, but I mean, this is probably a team that's like 25-2 or 3 going into the postseason. Season's over.
Yeah.
Like that. And so that's what baseball and softball is fickle because all it takes is one really good day by the opposing pitcher, and your season's done.
Mm-hmm. Or you have a bad day. Your pitcher doesn't have it. You don't hit. I mean, it's just it's absolutely crazy. So, and if someone wants to keep up with those scores. I bet there's a place they can go. Yeah. There you go. There you go.
How that works.
It is.
Never changes.
Oh, shocking. All right.
22-6. Southside B branch went undefeated 12-0 in conference play. Won their district tournament. Hadn't lost since April the 2nd. And all of a sudden their season's over.
Man.
That's how baseball is a crazy game.
It is insane. Okay, we'll just go to the next topic. It's softball. They're rolling along, ranked 11th in the country, 35-13, 13-8 in the SEC, which is in 4th place, behind Tennessee, A&M. When did they get good in softball? And Florida. Closed out against Ole Miss, which is the bottom feeder in the league, so that should be 3 straight wins. I mean, they're just kind of cruising right along, winning series after series. It's almost to the point now they've got to make it to Oklahoma City at some point, right? Just to legitimize it all, because otherwise it's just kind of, well, here we go again, which is not really fair.
It does feel that way. It certainly does feel that way. I think softball is still more of a regional sport, not fan-wise, not talent-wise, but more so in the travel for the committee. And so the one thing that Arkansas is going to always run into, they're going to be a host in a regional. Arkansas has now gotten to that point. They're a lock to host a regional.
Yes.
It's the problem with that second weekend. You
get
to the second weekend, you get paired up, and it's just way too easy for the committee to say, you know what, Fayetteville to Norman. Or maybe this case scenario, Fayetteville to Austin. It's going to be way too easy to pair up Arkansas, Oklahoma, and Texas, and sometimes even Oklahoma State, as good as they've been traditionally in recent history. You got to beat a really good team. You got to be a top 5 team to get to the College World Series, because Arkansas is kind of always going to be on that bubble of anywhere, just kind of say 7 to 10, somewhere in that range. So even if you're hosting, you're going to play a really good team. And and I was looking at that and seeing Arkansas has won 15 of 16 road series now, dating back to last year, last couple of years, how good they've been. Like, you almost assume they're going to get paired up with Oklahoma or Texas in a super regional, and it's going to be a really, really, really tough road to hoe.
Yeah. I mean, there are more teams, and it's going to be interesting too with the SEC expanding, bringing in Oklahoma and Texas. Man, that super is, I mean, that's tough. And there are so many good teams and just so many spots. I mean, you need a break here or there. And so maybe, hopefully, and it's kind of funny, they've kind of gone under the radar. There's been so much hype the last few years. Maybe this is the year they break through when they don't have all the attention. And would it be easier to break through on the road than at home? Because at home, all the expectations, and you can eliminate all those distractions when you go on the road.
Yeah, maybe a little bit. Last year they hosted the Super Regional, if I'm not mistaken, was it last year, the year before, and they obviously didn't get out of it. They almost, it doesn't matter where they happen. If they play at Fayetteville, Norman, or the Moon, they need to win one of those big series.
Yeah,
but they just need something to fall into place. They obviously need to go out and dominate in the circle, and because you almost feel like, we see this time and time again across the country, and Arkansas has been just cursed in every sport, so it doesn't seem to happen to them. One thing to fall into place and everything, all of a sudden you're set for the next 10 or 12 years.
Yeah.
It really does feel that way. Like softball is like right there on the precipice of pushing over that mountaintop. Arkansas baseball is there. Like getting to the College World Series is old hat for them. Now winning one. Softball is just on that next run down. It's like, okay, they're a regional team, a host. They're a super regional type team. Now can they push that rock up the hill a little bit farther and finally punch their ticket to the College World Series? And until they do it, until they get some big wins over a weekend space in that super regional format, you have to okay, maybe next year.
Yeah, no, I would agree. I think that's fair. All right, we'll move on to our next. Whoop! I hit the wrong button. That is not the button we want. Hey, but just to let you know, we are changing topics to the NFL draft. Yes, the draft. Now, how much of the draft did you watch? I must admit, I watched the entire first day. And I kind of had other stuff going on after that. But
I'm going to create a diagram here.
And kudos to Detroit. Did a phenomenal job. The turnout was unbelievable.
I don't know if you can see that.
0.
That's how many picks I missed.
Wow.
Watched every single pick.
Yeah.
Wow. Fired up the man cave. Had baseball going on one TV on both days, all 3 days. I watched every single pick live.
Jeez. Now,
nerded out. I loved watching all of
Which
it.
coverage did you watch, or did you mix them up?
So on Thursday nights, actually all weekends. Thursday night I had 2 of them on. I'm a huge Mel Kiper fan, always have been.
Yeah.
And so I always have him on. But Thursday night I watched the Belichick one because I wanted to hear what he had to say. Okay. So he was on there with the Pat McAfee show.
That was ESPN 2? Okay.
Yeah. So because my TVs are the same brand, I hit the mute on one and it unmutes the other one. So it's actually pretty good. It worked out really well. But for Friday, Saturday, so 2 through 7, I had ESPN 2, or I guess it might have been ESPN's main broadcast. One Mel Kiper was on.
Okay.
Lewis Riddick wears me out and he screams. He acts like he's screaming at the television, but I suffered through him so I could hear Mel Kiper. Is
that the one Greenberg was on? Because I just can't deal with Greenberg. So I watched the NFL Network, and it was pretty good. I don't know. It's almost, granted, it is a TV show, and that's all it is. But Kaylee Hartung was interviewing the players on the stage as they were walking off, and I don't know. It was just like, it's not it's not putting them in the best situation. So I don't know if you ever win in that, but it's just, but you got to fill it with something. So
but not that. That was honestly cringeworthy watching.
Oh, it was painful. Yeah, and some of the stuff they're saying, you're like, okay.
Well, I mean, it's either a blessing or thank God. I mean, I'm blessed.
Yeah.
Or
talking jive, or talking some smack. Which, but then again, to be put in that situation in front of 250,000 people
Yeah.
and that moment, I mean, it's kind of hard to just, and not having been there before,
Mm-hmm.
a regional
Well,
soundbite's not probably
yeah.
realistic, which
I
is
mean,
why
the
they
best
do
one
it.
was, yeah. The best one was when they interviewed the parents backstage, and she's trying to get all philosophical and go deep. Like, how far have you come? Came from
Yes,
Baton Rouge, Louisiana.
all the way from Baton Rouge, Louisiana. Yes. See, and that's the thing too, because it's a TV show. They try to over dramatize everything,
Yeah.
and it's ridiculous.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely ridiculous. So, with all that being said, who had the best draft team wise, do you think? Or I don't know, you could single out one or two, but are there any
Yeah.
teams that jumped that you thought, yeah, they did pretty good?
I mean, the Bears. I mean, honestly, I mean, they get not only Caleb Williams, whether you think he's the best quarterback or not, he's certainly in the class of one or two.
Mm-hmm.
But the fact that Odunze falls all the way to
Yeah.
number 9 for them, and just falls
Yeah.
right into their lap, and he can go to a place where he doesn't even have to be their number 1 receiver. You got Keenan Allen on the other side that's going to demand everybody's best cover guy. I mean, they didn't have a lot of draft picks other than the first two, but when you can get number one, the number 1A, and who a lot of people think is the best receiver, a lot of
Mm-hmm.
people thought that he might even be better than Marvin Harrison Jr. I mean, it's
Yeah.
hard to argue with what Arizona did, or excuse me, Chicago did.
Yeah, the only pushback I would give on Chicago is you've got a defensive head coach who most people think will get fired,
Mm-hmm.
probably should have been fired. You're going to have a first year offensive coordinator who's never been an offensive coordinator in the NFL.
Yeah.
Not exactly ideal. I mean, it may work out, but to me that's almost as big a crapshoot as
Mm-hmm.
selecting players in the draft.
Yeah, no, you're exactly right. And New England's going to have the same situation. First year head coach, first year offensive coordinator in that system. I mean, so yeah, I mean, it's going to rookie quarterbacks never fall into good situations. I mean, that's other than I mean, which I think who had the worst draft, Atlanta. Other than the
Yes.
Michael Penix going to the Falcons, I mean, every one of these quarterbacks are going to be thrown to the wolves. Penix is going to sit for 3 years, which makes again leads to my point of what the hell is
Well,
Atlanta doing.
but he may not. But and I was thinking about this too. With them expanding now 17 games, they're going to go to 18 at some point. Probably
Mhm.
not a bad idea to have, instead of just having the emergency quarterback as your backup, you're going to need somebody legit, because just to
Yeah,
get through the regular season is going to be such a chore. And for Kirk Cousins, it's always been a chore. Now, granted, it's kind of, I don't know that they knew Penix would fall to 8, but you would think they'd have an idea. But then it is the
hmm
Falcons. I didn't have a problem with the pick. It's more like, why did you go sign Cousins and give him this massive deal when you were
exactly.
in position you were probably going to get a good quarterback in the draft, and you could have saved a lot of money cap
hmm
wise and put it elsewhere.
Yeah, that's what you don't understand with Atlanta is you give Kirk Cousins 100 million guaranteed. He's got a 4-year deal, and I understand he's coming off the injury and he's 36
Mm-hmm.
years old. But you don't make that signing knowing that there's even a possibility you take a
Yeah,
quarterback at number 8. They knew what draft
exactly.
pick they had. They knew what their draft pick they had going into the offseason before they signed Kirk Cousins. And I guarantee they don't go to Kirk Cousins and say, "Hey, we're going to sign you, but we're also going to sign a quarterback." I mean,
No.
you automatically say, "Hey, you're going to give me a tight, you're going to give me Brock Bowers, you're going to give me a wide receiver, you're going to give me some offensive line help, maybe you help the other side of
Mm-hmm.
the ball." You don't bring in competition or a backup at the number
Yeah,
8 pick. That's not a luxury pick. Atlanta is not good enough to have luxury picks. It's
yeah.
just it's a dysfunctional franchise, and that's again why they've been relevant for 1 year in the last 50.
Yes. Not only are we expecting you to lead the franchise, but we want you to mentor your
Right.
replacement as well. So May drafted Drake May drafted by the
Mm-hmm.
Patriots. Do you
Yeah.
sit him or do you play him? What do you hear, and what would you do if it? Which, if he's that good, it
Yeah.
makes sense to take him at number 3. I don't know
Mm-hmm.
that I'd throw him to the wolves though.
Well, there's kind of a twofold question here. One, you look at the schedule,
Mm-hmm.
and you see who you've got the first 6 to 8 weeks. And if you're playing Kansas City, Baltimore, the Cowboys, 49ers all in a row, you let him sit. Games you're probably going to lose anyway, right?
Mm-hmm.
But all of a sudden, if you've got 2 games with the Jets, a game with the Bills, maybe Kansas City sprinkled in there, maybe you got I don't even know who the Patriots schedule is, but say if you got some bottom feeders on there and you got a chance to be successful, maybe you reevaluate it that way. What I would do, no matter if you're pick number 1, pick number 256, you go to training camp and you find out who can play. And what with the quarterback position, say if you've got Jacoby Brissett's here and Drake May's here, you play Drake May. If Jacoby Brissett's here and Drake May is here, there's a pretty significant gap. You go ahead and sit him. But if it's close, I mean, what do you got to lose? I mean, you get him some reps. Sure, is he going to take some lumps? Maybe you screw it up like you did with Mac Jones. But I think more so, I think the Mac Jones degression was offensive line based and that was talent based. Surely, but also you go into it thinking about that too. Just like the offensive tackle that the Chiefs had. That they take in the second round, Kingsley, whatever his last name is.
Yeah, the guy from BYU. Yeah.
Yeah. So you draft him knowing that you've got some holes on the offensive line. And if you've got a veteran and him are pretty level, you go ahead and play him, right?
Yeah.
Because the upside is far more. Even though you got your franchise quarterback, and all of a sudden if he misses a block and the quarterback blows his knee out, you're pointing to that offensive line like, hey, you cost us this. But you take that risk. So to me, you take the position out of it. And you rate the way of the risk reward. I get quarterback's important, but if it's close, if talent level is close, go ahead and play the rookie.
Okay, well that makes sense. I just think back to the whole David Carr Texans thing, where he just got killed. Of course, he had nothing around him, and then he was out of the league in 4 years, and he's on the milk carton. So
yeah, but if you've got an offensive line like you had last year, if you're New England, there's no way you roll Drake May out there. Like if you're that bad up front, if you're winning, and they showed it in the draft countless times, they won 43% of their pass blocks last year. Dead last in the NFL. I mean, you're not even winning the coin flip at that point. Like you're losing against the coin. Like, hey, we're getting good pass protection this time? Nope.
Yeah.
So if you're going to be that bad up front, you go ahead and throw Jacoby Brissett to the Wolves for 6 or 8 games, and you start 2-6, and then maybe you make the change.
Yeah, because how often do you see a quarterback survive or fail and then come back later as a starter? It's pretty rare.
It's rare.
Very rare. The Eagles were solid. Got some serious secondary help, as you would expect. The Cowboys. Okay, the Cowboys are all in. Yeah. So they're going to re-sign Ezekiel Elliott, who they ran off. That's basically sums up the Dallas Cowboys.
It does.
That move. We're going to get rid of him.
The two teams,
now we're going to bring him back.
The two teams that just make you scratch your head, like what in the world are you doing? Not only in the draft, the entire offseason. One is the Cowboys, because one, they said they're all in and they've done nothing. But 2 are the Buffalo Bills. Like, what in the world are they doing? Not only do you trade your best receiver and watch your number 2 receiver go sign with Jacksonville and Gabe Davis, you need a receiver in the draft. The fastest player on the planet available is there for you to take. And guess what you do?
You trade with the Chiefs.
You trade the pick to the one team that you can't beat.
Yes.
Tell me how does that make sense?
It makes no sense at all. And granted, now Worthy is not a lock, but the Chiefs are in a position where they can take a chance on it.
Yeah.
Sky Moore. Where's he?
And all of a sudden, the best offensive mind the NFL's seen in the last 30 years has a Tyreek Hill 2.0.
Yeah. Yeah. It was very odd. And of course, the Bills are the ones they traded with when they got the Mahomes pick.
Yeah, and so apparently New England made an attempt to trade up to Buffalo at 32 to get ahead of Carolina to draft a receiver. And Buffalo says, no, we're not going to trade with you, but they traded to Carolina anyway.
Yeah, I don't know what the Bills were thinking. And then I've seen some people who say the receiver they got out of Florida State, whose name escapes me, some had him a C+. Yeah. Some had, and he had a colorful press conference and stuff. But yeah, it was just really odd because they traded out of the first round. So then and most people thought they would trade that second round pick for more picks, but they didn't. Yeah. So I don't know. It was kind of interesting. I thought we'd have more trades than we did.
Yeah, I really
but not too surprising. I mean, Bo Nix went to Denver like everybody kind of thought.
Mm-hmm.
Sean Payton, can probably fix him. But, there wasn't really anything other than the Penix pick at 8. There
Mm-hmm.
wasn't really anything that just made you go, what was that?
Yeah, a couple of major runs happens. Obviously the quarterbacks. I don't think anybody
Hmm.
thought all six of those quarterbacks were going to be going in
No,
the first 12.
no, not at
But
all.
when Penix got taken, that caused the other teams to probably reach.
Panic. Yeah.
Then you had the wide receiver run at the end of the first round, start of the second round, which caused some teams to probably reach. And then into the second rounds, all the offensive tackles started getting scooped up and caused some teams like the Patriots that probably reached for an offensive tackle early third round that probably should have been available later just because, but those positions are so important, quarterback, receiver, offensive tackle, that you kind of overextend yourselves a little bit because the two offensive linemen the Patriots signed, one from drafted, excuse me, one from A&M, one from Penn State, really really good college players. One for Power Five conferences, but probably should have been available around later. But they couldn't take the risk of missing out altogether, and so they reached for both of them.
Yeah. No, that totally makes sense. So that is we'll end our draft recap. We'll tell you, you can email us, follow us on X. The Crepe Myrtle story. I want to hear the
Oh,
Crepe Myrtle story, sir.
all right, so we got 2.5 minutes. So I'm gonna try to get in there. So I've got this Crepe Myrtle in my backyard, and the people we bought the house from clearly did not do yard work. And I have never owned a home before, did zero yard work.
Mm-hmm.
So this Crepe Myrtle, which I think should be like 5 to 6 feet tall maximum, like take care of your stuff, chop it down. I know they're bigger than that. It was
Yes.
easily 25 feet tall, and
Oh my
it's
goodness.
yeah, it's massive. And so I said, we're gonna cut this thing down. And so I got a chainsaw and I shear it off about 5 feet. And this is over the winter. And so then it starts to little sprouts are coming up. I was like, I was hoping it died, but it didn't.
Yeah.
So I was like, you know what? I'm gonna dig this thing up. So I chainsaw it again to about 2 feet tall, and I Google like how deep are the roots supposed to be, 12 to 14 inches. All right, big deal. So we're digging, dig all the way around it, and I think I've probably got a pretty good chunk of it dug up. Gonna lean on a little bit. So it feels like it's buried in concrete. So I get the chainsaw, start cutting the roots, work on it for an hour, push on it, doesn't move. Go to the store, buy an axe. So this is 2 days ago. I am literally 2 or 3 hours of me acting like Kratos from the video game God of War, just swinging an
Mm-hmm.
axe. Just
Paul Bunyan
oh,
out there.
all going to town, chopping things I can't see, going through the dirt, digging it up. Got the hose so I can water it off and see where the roots are. And I am exhausted. Go to push it into Tuesday night. Push it, doesn't move. I'm like, oh my god, you got to be kidding me. So at this point, I've dulled my chainsaw blade. So I go buy a new chainsaw blade and chain and go on it yesterday and worked on it a little bit, about 30 minutes, and I go to nudge it and I feel it move. Oh, Bobby's about to win this battle. So I get the axe and I'm just attacking the base, and then I push on it and it moves. I mean, it legit moves. And your boy got in 3-point stance and went full blown offensive line on the sled on it and just. And finally, after about 3 or 4 good minutes of me getting in the line, nudging on it, leaning on it, whole thing finally fell over. I'll send you the picture. So if you want to throw it up on the,
Yes. We need to
oh,
tweet that picture.
I've never felt so accomplished in my entire life watching this Crepe Myrtle fall to the ground.
Awesome. Now you get to buy mulch like the rest of us.
Nope, it's gonna be part of the yard. That flower bed's gone.
Final word.